We all split up to search for Lev so we could cover more ground. I didn't see any trace of him at first, so I thought I must have gone the wrong way. But then I noticed footprints that looked like someone had slipped over a nearby ledge. And sure enough, when I peeked down, I saw a familiar figure sitting hunched over, knees to his chest. He looked a little scraped up, but didn't seem to be hurt badly. I was just glad I'd managed to find him still in one piece. When I told him I was a Skyfarer, he immediately burst into tears of relief. I could tell he was upset with the villagers about something, and that's why he couldn't be honest with them. But as an outsider, I thought I might have a chance. Watch closely. I'm gonna cast some special magic just for you. It was time for one of my master's patented magic tricks. I showed Lev my empty palm before covering it with a handkerchief. I flung the cloth away, and voila! There was a piece of candy in my hand.
Wow, candy!
Here, you can have it. After devouring the candy, he finally calmed down.
Thanks.
But his face fell again as quickly as it had lit up. I guess he really doesn't want to go home. I decided I wouldn't leave him until there was a smile back on his face. If it were me in his shoes, I'm sure I'd be worried sick about my parents too. There's nothing wrong with worrying about your parents. I'm sure they're proud to have a son who cares so much.
But
what? Something was still on his mind.
I always wanted to be a great doctor, just like my mom and dad. But after my mom collapsed, I started thinking maybe everybody else was just using them.
Along the way, he'd stopped being able to trust the people of Folka, and he thought feeling that way meant he could never follow in his parents' footsteps. Lev stared at the ground as he spoke, finally confiding his troubles to me. After hearing his story, I began to open up about my own parents. He listened to my words in silence. My parents had also strained themselves too hard after getting sick, and eventually passed away. So Lev's circumstances were all too familiar. Just like him, I felt nothing but bitterness and despair. But there was one difference. I've got to admit, I envy you a little. After all, your mom and dad are still alive and well. While we were standing there talking, Lev's parents and the villagers were probably beside themselves with worry, braving the dangers of the forest to search for him.
I'm sorry.
Are you sure I'm the person you should be saying that to? I stood up and smiled at Lev. He and his family all seemed like really good people. The only thing they needed to patch their home back together was a long heart-to-heart. As we made our way back to town, Lev still seemed anxious. Don't start freaking out yet. First you need to apologize to your parents. Then you can tell them everything you told me.
Well, how am I supposed to say it, though?
Talk about helpless. Lucky for him, he had a grown-up lady around to nudge him in the right direction. How about I teach you that special magic I showed you earlier?
But that wasn't real magic, right? It was just some cheap trick.
Rude. It was good enough to make you stop blubbering, wasn't it? Come on, let me see your hand. The trick I showed him could be used without any special training. It was the magic designed to bring smiles that my master had taught me. Lev watched me closely. then tried his best to copy what I did of Lev's parents and the other villagers. Lev? Answer if you can hear me!
Where are you, Lev?
Mom! Dad!
As soon as Lev heard his parents' voices, he broke into a run. At that moment, the villagers' shouts echoed through the nearby woods.
Look out!
An enormous figure was approaching, knocking down trees as it lumbered toward us. It couldn't be. A goblin?
Intruders, die!
It all happened so quickly. The goblin lunged to attack Lev's parents.
You're gonna have to go through us first.
Huh?
Lev was speechless. It seemed as if the entire town of Folka had stepped up to protect his parents from the monster.
Puny weaklings!
What I did next was purely out of instinct. Freeze! A block of ice had...
Tasty meat! You first!
The spell had done its job. I'd gotten the goblin's attention. I finally made a breakthrough with Lev. I wasn't gonna let monster breath over here ruin their happy reunion. Bring it on! I've got a spell with your name on it.
I wish there was something we could do to help them.
I'll try mixing up a potion.
I don't believe it. She took it down all by herself.
Told you we could handle it.
First you saved Tempeal, and now us. Thank you, Skyfarer.
The people of Folka were all safe, including Lev's parents. After thanking me, Lev turned to the villagers, shuffling his feet nervously.
I'm really sorry, everybody. Thanks for protecting my mom and dad.
Come now, there's no need for that. We're the ones who ought to be thanking your folks. They've done so much for us. Sorry for everything we've put your family through.
Lev and I shared a glance before he turned to his parents, finally telling them everything he'd been bottling up inside. His parents, didn't you? We're so sorry for making you worry.
I chalked it all up to selfishness and immaturity, but I should have heard you out. I hope you can forgive your old man.
I was just glad everything had turned out all right in the end. Ew! We're here to help!
Sorry, we were clear on the other side of the woods. What happened to that giant monster?
What the heck? You're the one who said heroes always arrive just in the nick of time. But what kind of hero arrives after the fight's already over?
What does that matter right now? Here, let me take a look at you. You're not hurt or anything, are you?
You have no idea how much I wanted to tease Rackham for losing his cool. But I held it in. It's really nice knowing you have people who care. All right. Hello there. The day had arrived for Lev to show his parents the magic trick he learned from me. Was he going to be able to pull it off? I had to see for myself, so I followed them to a restaurant in town and sat at a nearby table. Somehow just watching was enough to make me nervous too.
I want to show you something.
Come on, you can do this! It's all about sleight of hand, remember? Lev showed his parents the palm of his empty hand and covered it with a handkerchief. Then he removed the cloth just like I taught him. But when he opened his hand, there was nothing there. I thought he must have made a mistake, but it turned out I was wrong.
I learned this trick so I could make others smile. You're actually supposed to have a present in your hand when you open it, but I couldn't think of what to give you.
Unable to hold in the tears any longer, Lev started to cry.
You both have done so much for me. I just couldn't find anything good enough.
He wiped away his tears with the back of his hand, his voice quavering slightly as he fought to get the words out.
I'm really sorry for running off and scaring you guys. But I was worried because you're always so busy. It hurt when you wouldn't listen to me, and I've been so lonely. Tried not to let it get to me, but it just ended up being too much.
We're sorry too, Lev. But don't worry. Soon we won't be as swamped anymore. There's supposed to be a big group moving to Folka from Seed Hollow soon. I hear at least one of them's a doctor.
Once things have settled down, we'll all spend some quality time together. I'd love to go shopping in Seed Hollow as a family. That sort of thing. You'd like that too, right, dear?
Of course. As long as we decide on a budget beforehand.
Way to go, Lev! Seeing them all smiling together like that reminded me of Master Sokka for some reason. Once we're back in Fanta Grande, I think I'll pay a visit to Vault and tell him all about this little adventure. Sometime later, a brand new clinic was built in Folka. Apparently, the people of Tempule and Folka had chipped in to pay for it. A doctor really did move in from Seed Hollow, too, so Lev's parents were finally able to make more time for their son.
I'm gonna be a great doctor one day. I'll work super hard so I can give you a real present. Just you wait and see.
With an attitude like that, I have no doubt he'll make an amazing doctor. And besides, now he has my patented magic trick to put smiles on everyone's faces. When I peeked inside the clinic on one of our days off, I saw Lev chatting happily with the people of Folka. I'm sure this town will keep prospering even after we leave. The people here are tough. They'll overcome any hardship that comes their way. And that's what I believe anyway. After seeing the smile on Lev's face, how could I think otherwise?
I once gave up being a skyfarer. Also, I could take up arms to protect my home island, Auguste. Man, she was special. You see, there aren't too many places in Fanta Grande with oceans, much less ones as gorgeous and pristine as Auguste's. And I'd be damned if I stood by as the Erste Empire sullied its waters with the byproducts of their weapons research. It goes without saying that I enlisted. Good thing, too, because it was in the midst of the ensuing war that I met the Grand Cipher crew. They helped us, the local mercenaries, I mean, take a fight. In the end, the war wasn't decided by either side, but by the patron deity of the land. And it's all my fault. Man, the way Apollonia looked at me, like a wolf staring down her bunny-eared breakfast. I couldn't face her. But this crew, there was something about their vitality, you know? Here were these young'uns standing against impossible odds and coming out stronger for it. Maybe if this old man took good notes, he could eventually have an honest conversation with his own baby girl. So, I asked to join the crew and took up a life of skyfaring once again. The next time my daughter and I met, I wouldn't let fear and regret keep me from moving forward. How'd me and my daughter end up estranged? Well, the first thing you need to know is that my wife was stricken by a terminal illness. I refused to listen to the doctors. Terminal my foot. Even if there was no cure in Auguste, surely there ought to have been something in other lands. And so, I left my family at home, crisscrossing the skies looking for a cure. Got into a lot of adventures along the way, and somehow ended up making a name for myself. But no matter how far and wide I traveled, the cure eluded me. And while I was away, my wife, she breathed her last. I wasn't there for her when she needed me most. I never even got the chance to say goodbye. Regret and self-loathing crashed over me in never-ending waves, threatening to pull me under. You can't even begin to imagine the pain. And there was nothing I could do about it. It was all my fault. My daughter spent countless days looking after her sick mother, fighting off fear and dread. It's not hard to imagine why she hates me. She must have asked herself time and again, why was her father gallivanting across the skies while his family suffered? By the time I finally came home, she was long gone. There were no other relatives to turn to. The only family she'd known was no more. All I could do was stand dazed and helpless in the cold, empty shell of the home we'd made. After that, 15 years passed. I met the captain, and through my travels with the crew, reunited with my daughter. This might surprise you, but we didn't have a tearful, touching father-daughter reunion the second time around either. I spent so long telling myself that the next time we met, I'd face up to my past. But when the moment came, I froze. What could I possibly say or do for her as a father, after all this time? Any courage I'd mustered withered in the face of her scorn, and I was left standing there, feeling like an old bastard. Sometime after this heartwarming reunion, I bonded with Leviathan, and through our link, saw glimpses of what lay in my daughter's heart. I thought I had escaped all those painful memories, but here they were. In that world created by the Pact with Leviathan, my wife was still alive. I saw how things might have been if I had done things differently. Of course, I knew none of this was real, but I would rather stay in a world of memory than live in a cold, lonely reality without her. But she wasn't having any of that. She said I couldn't sacrifice my future to dwell in the past. She made me promise to fix things between myself and our daughter. Said she'd boot me out of the ocean if I came back without completing my task. Her words finally gave me the push I needed to face my past and start on the path to a brighter future. They gave me the strength to fight for my daughter in her hour of need. And I'd like to think that I finally did something fatherly, if only just the once. Of course, I don't expect our relationship to be mended with one conversation or act of bravery. But little by little, I think we're getting there. When Tempeal was hit by a devastating storm, refugees flocked to the safe haven of Folka. We heard the news and docked on the island, which was buzzing with activity. It was clear. All hands were needed on deck as reconstruction efforts got underway. So we walked through the city, looking out for opportunities to help. That's when we saw a distressed young Draff. We didn't know the details, but it was plain as day that something wasn't right. He was stumbling around, eyes unfocused, and staring into space. I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't leave him on his own, so we ended up trailing him. We came to the edge of a cliff. Though the morning sun shone on our faces, a frigid wind blew down our backs. The draft just stood at the edge, staring at something only he could see. Hey, careful there! With the wind whipping around like this, you might lose your footing! The draft whirled around, taken off guard. After a while, he looked away, shrugging.
Thanks for your concern.
You look like you've got something on your mind. If you want a friendly ear, you've got him here.
I guess I do.
He smiled, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. The draft introduced himself as Karzeda. Back in Tempeal, he was a jeweler's apprentice.
My childhood friend was caught up in that storm. I was in love with her. Could never get up the courage to tell her. And now it's too late.
Karzeda bit down on his lip, as if he was trying to hold back his despair. He went on, telling us that he'd hit a slump in his apprenticeship. Nothing he did could gain his master's approval. His frustration boiled over, and he got into a rip-roaring fight with his friend. Hurt, she fled from the workshop. He didn't go after her.
I wish I had, because that's the day the storm came.
Karzeda's face twisted in agony. He made a mistake, and it ended up costing him someone dear. I could understand all too well. Karzeda stared at the sunbeams as they illuminated the cliffside. His eyes were watering, and not just from the sun's rays.
When we were kids, we made a promise. Once I became a proper jeweler, I'd share my most treasured secret with her. Cowardly, yes, but that was the only way I could tell her how I felt.
It all made sense now. His deepest, darkest regret was putting off telling her what was in his heart for so long.
We made that promise ages ago. I wouldn't have been surprised if she forgot all about it.
Karzeda paused, as if remembering something. He lifted his gaze to the sky, then continued.
Oh, right. I have to go back to the mines in Tempeal. There are keepsakes of hers there. I don't think she can move on without them.
I could tell how important this was to him. But when the people fled Tempeal, a horde of monsters moved right on in. Actually, forget the fiends. Karzeda wasn't in shape to go anywhere right now. What do these keepsakes look like? I can head to the mines and track them down for you. Considering his condition, I wasn't about to give him room to argue. Besides, I know all about not being able to share the important stuff with a loved one while there's still time. There's so much I didn't get to tell my family. Even now, thinking of our old house makes my heart ache something fierce. That day, there was no one to greet me when I opened the door. Seeing the cold remains of my home tore open a void in my heart. But you know what? I managed to keep going because my friends were there for me. This time it was my turn to support someone who needed it. The keepsake should be somewhere around here. Might as well inspect the mine shafts as we go too.
Crawling with goblins!
You can't just let them run amok. Time to get to work. That was too easy. They act like they own the place. Sorry, but you're gonna have to move.
Watch out! That one's got a bone!
Here's a little payback.
Fuji! Nikolai!
You picked the wrong guy to have a shooting contest with. Carzeda's counting on us to find those keepsakes. A watering can, a shovel. These are the keepsakes.
Huh? Did you hear that? Whoa! More goblins! And what are the size of that one?
Goblins brought backup, huh? Fine, but... We got the big one. I think we can rest easy.
That's town.
Sheesh. The place was crawling with goblins. Good thing we came instead of Carzeda. Carzeda said his friend loved flowers. Tempeal's soil was harsh and didn't lend itself to flora, but her dream was to grow a variety of flowers and let them bloom all over the land. Knowing how much her dream meant to her, Carzeda wanted to bring her gardening tools back and place them in front of her grave. His hands were trembling when I passed them over.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
He was so choked with emotion that each word sounded pained, like thorns sticking in his throat. I kept my eyes on him. It felt like if I looked away for even a second, he'd fade into the great blue beyond. He was still grappling with his hurt. You wanted to say goodbye to her properly, right? Come on, I'll go with you. I slapped him on the shoulder, silently willing him to pull himself together.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Carzeda hugged the tools tightly against his chest, his teeth biting down hard on his lip. It broke my heart, seeing someone so young deal with such overwhelming tragedy. The least I could do was help him see this through.
What'll it be? Something hard?
Yes, can I help you?
Just as we arrived at the cemetery, the clouds opened up, unleashing a torrent of rain. The blue sky was gone, painted over by a steely, unforgiving gray. Looking around, I saw that there were others paying their respects at different plots. Like Carzeda, they probably lost loved ones to the storm. As soon as he laid eyes on the mound of earth in front of him, the dam broke. Carzeda's shoulders heaved with his sobs.
Why did I say those awful things? There were so many more important things I wanted to tell you, but
He sank to his knees, crippled with grief. His fist beat at the earth, sending drops of muddy water splashing onto his face.
I didn't want that to be our last conversation. If I hadn't blown up, if we hadn't fought, I only wanted to see you smile, but I made you cry.
All I could do was watch over Carzeda as he poured out the feelings he'd held back for so long. Let it out, son. It's the only way to get through it. After the visit, we made our way to a tavern. We could hear the rain beating down on the establishment. It was still day, but the sky was dark as night. Carzeda ordered the stiffest drink they had and downed it in one gulp.
My friend once showed me a flower and said that each one symbolizes something. At the time, I didn't get it, and I had other things on my mind, so I never bothered looking it up.
He shook his head, saying that he'd wished he had treasured those small, everyday moments with her. Each word struck me like a blow, reminding me of my own failures.
How am I supposed to live with this regret? It's like the storm outside, pounding on me until I give in and let it sweep me away.
I mulled over his question for a while before opening my mouth. I'm not the right person to answer that. Only your friend knows.
But how? She's...
So I told Karzeda about my wife, and about the agony of losing her. All the things I'd hoped for, things we could do as a family, were no longer possible. The chasm of remorse threatened to swallow me whole. I couldn't imagine things getting better. Not then, not ever. But I was still alive. Unlike my wife, I still had a future. Didn't that obligate me to move forward, to find meaning in being left behind, and try to fulfill what she wanted for me? Didn't that apply to Karzeda? You want me to go with you, to find that flower, I mean? Maybe finding it would give him the answers he needed.
Do you think we can find the flower? That sounds like a good idea.
Karzeda spoke haltingly, as if remembering the times he shared with his beloved friend. She'd always loved flowers. Tempil was a land forged by its mines, and its climate wasn't suitable for flowers. But that wasn't going to stop her. As if that thread of memory had unspooled another, Karzeda said that his friend mentioned having a secret flower garden. But she hadn't told him the location, so he wasn't sure where to begin looking.
Sometimes she'd head out to a forest near Folka. If the garden's anywhere, it's probably somewhere in there.
It might be a long shot, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I drained the last of my glass. We stepped out of the tavern. The rain had stopped. The air was humid, but the sun was a welcome sight after the rain. I squinted up at the brilliant blue sky. There, arcing over the forest, was a large rainbow. We took our first steps into the forest. There's something about the woods after it rains. The air's so pure and refreshes the spirit. I had a good feeling we'd find that garden in no time. My optimism didn't last long. We spent hours searching every single likely spot, and a lot of unlikely ones too. Yet the garden eluded us. If it was here, it was tucked away somewhere really obscure. While we searched for those flowers, I made sure to keep tabs on Karzeda as well. The sun might have come out, but his expression was still clouded. He looked like he was on the verge of breaking down. I figured I should say something to try and shore up his spirits. I told him that no matter how harsh things are now, or how bad some days will be, there's always meaning in getting up each day, even if it takes some time to find it. Sometimes a search will take you back the way you came. Sometimes it's a detour. But even that has meaning, because the answer could lie off the beaten path. The important thing is to take things 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. Even regret, though it seems as tall and foreboding as a mountain, might become a gentle hill you could walk over, given enough time. I know what it sounds like. But I wasn't just telling him this to make myself feel better. It's just... sometimes, you have to run when the going gets tough, and that's fine. Just as a ship needs a port in a storm, a soul needs a safe harbor. Turning your back on your problems isn't the solution. No one knows that better than me. But we're allowed to make mistakes. That's part of the journey, and what it means to be alive. At some point, we have to settle up with the demons inside of us and learn to live with them. I've been skyfaring long enough to trust my gut. And it says we'll find that garden.
Thank you. If only I knew what she was growing.
We'll know once we find it. Just stay close to us, okay? Here goes!
Let's look for that garden.
Gotta be
Maybe we can find some clues around here.
It's raining swords!
This is the place. I know it. But it's...
Senseless brutes. Got no respect for flowers. First things first, we fight. Get back, Granblue. Have some death! They don't stop coming. Guess I'm taking you all down in one fell swoop. Don't think you can trample someone's precious memories and get away with it. Here goes. Here goes.
We handled the monsters, but the garden...
You all right, Karzada? Come on, pull yourself together. People weren't the only ones who lost their homes to the storm. Monsters that were driven from their former territories flocked to the woods surrounding Folka. We finally found the garden, but the monsters had trampled a good chunk of the flowers, leaving behind only a few pathetically wilted survivors. Karzada stared at the carnage, dumbstruck. I couldn't blame him. It's not like the monsters had done it on purpose, but they might as well have stampeded over his broken heart. I'm no gardening expert, but even in their sorry state, I could tell that the flowers had been well cared for. Fertilizer, spades, watering cans, and other tools were laid out. Inside one of the equipment boxes, we found a notebook with detailed records of all the flowers she had planted. The notebook had instructions on how much fertilizer was needed to help the flowers take root in the mineral-loaded soil, the best time for planting, the names of the flowers, and what they symbolize. I passed the notebook to Karzada, who began reading it as if the secret to life was written in its pages. Maybe for him it was. The last page described another flower garden, separate from this one. With the notebook to guide us, we went in search of it. As we walked, I prayed for Karzada's sake that the other garden was intact.
All right.
We've got lunch specials, good food, good prices.
Hello there.
We came to a quiet clearing in the forest, devoid of any beasts. The only other presence besides us was a crisp breeze. Shafts of sunlight peeked through the trees that shaded the garden. I felt my breath catch in my throat as I took in the sight. Purple anemones bloomed, filling the entire clearing. Just looking at them, I could feel the tension drain from my body.
That's it. These are the flowers she talked about.
Karzeda opened the notebook. Flipping through its pages, he came to the section on anemones. Tears spilled down his cheeks as he read her notes.
I see. So that's what she was trying to tell me.
After a while, he pulled himself together and turned to me.
Thank you. For everything.
I saw it through his tears and heard it trembling on his voice. A fledgling seed of hope.
If you hadn't come when you did, well, I never would have known what she wanted to tell me.
He smiled, a pure expression devoid of the previous darkness.
She dreamed of a Tempeel blooming with flowers. And I'll carry the torch. I'll make sure her dreams come true.
Glad to hear it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other and you'll be fine. Karzeda placed a hand over his heart and closed his eyes, as though speaking to his beloved. Or maybe he was burning the sight of this garden in his mind's eye. Our time together came to an end, but I felt as if the storm clouds were truly gone, and in its place was a clear blue sky. Maybe part of the reason I was drawn to Karzeda is that I could sense that we shared something important. We both had regrets weighing us down. We made our share of mistakes. Still, there's no turning back time. All we can do is keep marching forward. Now that I think about it, just as I was there for Karzeda, there were a lot of people propping me up on my journey. I owe all those people my thanks. It's because of them that I stand here today.
Dear Eugen, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. Every now and then I hear news about you and your crew. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. I was finally able to get licensed as a full-fledged jeweler in Folka. I started creating pieces based on those purple anemones we saw. People love them. I can't make them fast enough to keep up with the demand. The proceeds from the sales go to organizations working to restore Tempeel to its former glory. Once we can go back home, I plan to create a large garden, just as she would have wanted. The promise we made as kids can't be fulfilled, but I plan to keep the promise I made to myself. I'll do it to bring her dream to life. P.S. I never did tell you what those purple anemones symbolize. According to her notebook, they mean, I believe in you. I'll wait for you. The next time you're in Folka, look me up. Until then, please take this pressed flower as a token of my gratitude. Dear Eugen, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done.
Zega Grande, the Forgotten Skydom. As I gazed into its perennial blue, I reflected on my last time here, during my travels with him. My memories of this place were distant, yet unforgettable.
Have you been here before, Rosetta?
Hmm? Perhaps I have. Who can say? Eventually, I'll share my tales of the captain's father and our journey together. When the time is ripe, of course. But first, I would need to sort through my own emotions. It was here in these skies that we would eventually part. I know. In the eyes of eternity, our time together lasted no longer than a blink. Yet his impact on me felt nothing short of eternal. Indeed, it wasn't nostalgia that I felt upon revisiting these skies. Rather, it was the significance of this place and all that transpired here that weighed heavily upon my heart. During the war, primal beasts were exploited by the Astrals as instruments of battle. Withered and faded, one primal would eventually drift to Lumacier Archipelago, making a home for herself. Over time, she grew accustomed to the comforts of its forests and the serenity they offered. It was a far cry from the brutalities of war. Centuries would pass until a young man stumbled upon her domain, forever altering the course of her life. She engaged him in a vicious battle, but was ultimately humbled in defeat. Accepting her fate, she resigned herself to death. However, the man would sheath his blade and, to her surprise, asked if she would join him on a journey across the skies. A primal beast was supposedly no more than an astral weapon. Beings born to be controlled, manipulated, and ill-used since time immemorial. She had never entertained the idea of something more. In fact, she hardly had a name for herself. Well, she did have a moniker, but it was a meaningless one, whose sole purpose was to identify her as a weapon. Perhaps out of pity, perhaps out of kindness, the man bestowed upon her a new name. It was from that moment she would truly blossom. Rosetta. It was his gift to her, one she would treasure and love for eternity. With every union comes an inevitable separation. When his journey neared its final chapters, as he took up arms against the god of destruction, I returned to the forests of Lumacier. After my return to the archipelago, I briefly longed for his companionship, but the flora and fauna kept me company. Decades came and went, and one day I would encounter yet another young visitor to the island. There was no mistaking it. This was his offspring. I realized at that very moment the time had come. He had entrusted this child to me from the ends of the skies. My heart swelled, but I concealed my excitement, flashing naught but a smile at the young captain. I would join the up-and-coming Skyfarer's crew on the Grand Cipher for another journey across the skies, this time as a bystander. During their travels, they would experience joys and triumphs, alongside loss and hardship. I continued to observe from afar, doing my best to obscure my true intentions. My roots were well planted in the past. Knowing what I knew, would I be able to act as a part of their crew in earnest? Before long, my ambivalence would come to a head. My convictions had begun to waver. Was this the right approach? Of course, I was conscious of reality. I knew their journey wouldn't be easy. They would have to face the harsh life the skies had in store for them. And with our foes only becoming more and more cumbersome, even for myself, could I possibly protect them? My presence on the Grand Cipher was inconsequential, and at worst, a hindrance to the crew. I thought if I weren't here, the captain, EO, the entire crew would handle themselves just fine. Perhaps the time had come to retire to the forests once more. But as I was preparing to leave, Io grabbed my hand so sweetly, so innocently, and said she needed me to stay. I couldn't bring myself to abandon her. I would be the bystander no longer. Everyone in the crew had a role to play, and I would be the exception no more. Finally, I found my purpose. I was free to experience the skies once again, hand in hand with the captain. It wasn't duty or obligation that anchored me to this crew. It was love. And I promised to always protect them. I would leave no regrets in the skies. Thus, our journey continued. Only this time I felt that I was a true member of the Grand Cipher. During our stay in Seed Hollow, a certain request made its way into our hands. We were to inspect sightings of a mysterious young girl near the Seed Hollow castle.
You don't think she's a ghost, do you?
I put a hand on Lyria's shoulder to comfort her, and asked the client for more details. According to reports, the young girl appeared to be looking for something. Workers helping with the castle's restoration effort would attempt to approach her, but she would vanish before they could get close. Each sighting would spook another handful of builders, until there weren't enough hands to complete repairs. By all accounts, it seemed to be a ghost. Of course, I couldn't admit that to Lyria. It was not uncommon for spirits to take refuge in ancient ruins or castles, and play tricks on any unfortunate souls passing by. They were almost never malicious, even friendly sometimes. However, we couldn't take our chances. I just wished we had more information to work with. There was something familiar about this story. I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. The bustling streets and alleyways of Seed Hollow were steeped in an unusual silence. Rumors of the phantom sightings had spread, and the citizens became too fearful to leave their homes. We were still missing a part of the picture, but what was it?
I'm sure it was just someone's minds playing tricks on them.
Poor Lyria. I needed to wrap up this investigation as quickly as possible. However, despite our comprehensive search of the castle, nothing stood out as unordinary. We'll have to come back another day. Just then, I noticed a faint movement in the corner of my eye. Wait, it couldn't be.
Huh? What are these guys doing here? We already took care of Granblue.
Ominous forms. Foul creatures born from the primal beast Granblue. Surely they weren't the cause of the sightings, were they? I had my doubts, but this was no time for questions. The castle was in dire need of some pruning. Such hostility. It seems we've no choice but to fight.
You sure these are the ghosts we're looking for?
What do you think?
Something about this place gives me the willies.
We'll uncover the truth soon, so hang in there, okay? This place will need more than a restoration if we don't do something about this. What do you... Looks like it's clear for now. Shall we?
Did you
Do
see
forgive
that?
me. Interesting. She supposedly disappears if you attempt to get close. But perhaps that wasn't the entire truth. Our job's not finished yet. Shall we? They've infested the entire courtyard. Who's ready for a pruning?
Oh, look! It's raining a sword!
Come, Crimson Thorn!
Fuji! Nicola!
Surprise!
Fighting up
Half
close
them
won't
dead.
do us good here.
Sounds to me like
Come
it's
and
time
get
for a ranged battle.
Granblue!
That's right up your alley, isn't it?
What do you think? Come, Crimson Thorn! Nope.
They hunt from underground.
Full blue!
We can't lose track of them.
More? There's such a thing as being too popular, you know?
Too much for ya?
Come, Crimson Thorn! Quite a tenacious bunch, aren't they? Question is, where are they coming from?
There's still more of them? Get a clue already.
Shall we? That should be the last of them.
Huh. And stay out.
Wait a second. What is that? What's this? A crystal fragment. I took a closer look. Within its faded luster was a familiar green aura. But where had I seen it before?
Hold up a second. Doesn't that remind you of those hallowed ground spots?
Vern was right. Its glow was nearly identical to the crystals found on hallowed grounds. Their unique aura kept monsters at bay, providing travelers with safe haven. Did this shard come from one?
It's faint, but Excavalian's aura. I can feel it coming from inside.
That couldn't be. I focused on the crystal splinter in hand, and indeed, there was the presence of a familiar primal. Excavalian was the primal beast of Dolly Island, much farther than a stone's throw from here. So why were we able to feel its presence all the way in Seed Hollow?
It's not the only one. I think I can feel another primal beast here too.
Another primal? How could that be possible? A phantom girl, Excavalian, ominous forms, and now another primal beast. None of it made any sense. As we unraveled more of the castle's secrets, it became clear that we had barely scratched the surface of its walls.
Yeah?
Right.
Hello there.
We were back at square one. In hopes of finding some new leads, we split up and interviewed every Seed Hollow local we could find. Despite our efforts, we found little new information. Zothba and his connections, on the other hand, proved invaluable once more as they unearthed a new clue. The girl wore a crown of flowers. I froze in place. I knew this primal. In fact, I learned of her on my first visit to Zega Grande. Konohana Sakuya, was it? Yes. An ethereal girl bearing a floral crown? It had to be her. Her presence would explain why Lyria sensed a primal beast in addition to Excavalian. She was pact-bound to Ulmarine Island, and she held domain over blossoming flowers. The unusually vibrant bouquets blooming across Seed Hollow just added more proof of her proximity. With the culprit identified, only one problem remained. Me. After what Sakuya and I went through, I doubt she would ever show herself around me again. Before I could share this revelation, there was something else I needed to discuss with the crew. Not about Konohana Sakuya, but my time spent with the captain's father. His crew was on a journey to collect Astrum fragments. These fragments were said to have fallen straight from the astral realm and contained the power of the primal beasts themselves. Using the fragments, the captain's father could separate astral power embedded within primal beasts and return them to their original forms. That was the purpose of his journey. His was a mission of liberation, to free so-called deities and legends who were tethered to the sky realm. Once free from the shackles of their corporeal forms, they could fade back into the nebulous ideas and faiths that had given them structure in the first place. Of course, it would be up to the primal beasts themselves to make this decision. Some had grown quite fond of living in the sky realm. However, there were countless others who were born into the skies, cursed to fight for eternity. These were the ones who longed for a return to the immaterial. At the lowest point in my existence, when I felt I had no purpose in these skies, I'm sure I felt the same. Regardless, some were quick to brand us a ruthless crew of primal hunters. And surely Konohana Sakuya had heard the rumors. But the question remained, why had she decided to reveal herself to me now? Unfortunately, simply knowing the identity of the girl would not solve the problem of her many phantom appearances.
So, is this, Kahuna Yakuza? You think she's the one causing the monsters to come out?
Unlikely. I've never met her in person, but I don't think she and the ominous forms are connected in the slightest.
Yo, got some new intel on the girl. You're still, working the case, right?
The family Zathba had been continuing to search for clues in the background, and thankfully, their search bore fruit. In one of the areas where the ghostly girl was sighted, a bystander had found an ancient book.
Broke my brain trying to read the dumb thing, but you're smart and pretty smart and, well, yeah.
Oh, poor boy couldn't even get his words straight. Thank you. You're quite the gentleman.
No, I'm not. I'm a badass. Anyway, I should get going.
He had barely placed the book in my hands before scurrying off. What had gotten into him, I wonder? I opened the book and peered through the rune-like characters inside. No normal person would be able to decipher this.
Oh, that looks really complicated. Really? Let me see.
When Vern approached the book, Roland's transceiver began to glow. It illuminated the text, somehow morphing the illegible script into something readable. My breath caught in my chest. Had an astral authored this book?
My hour has come.
The text seemed to be a log from an experiment of sorts. Although it was barely legible, I tried to grasp its meaning. Originally, it was Excavalion, primal beast of fortification, who forged a pact with Almarine Island. Although it's unclear why, Excavalion would eventually migrate to Dali, leaving Konohana Sakuya to take its place on Almarine. That was all I could make out of the texts. With this new information, I needed to re-examine the facts. First, the stage. Almarine Island, home to Seed Hollow and its citizens, once protected by Excavalion. Next, a curious switch. Konohana Sakuya takes its place as the island's pact-bound primal. Now, our present mysteries. A crystal shard replete with Excavalian's aura. On Gramainyu's altar beneath the castle, the ominous forms. And finally, Konohana Sakuya's curious reappearance. Think, Rosetta. Was the shard left behind by Excavalian? Did it serve a purpose in protecting the island? It was possible that Avia's invasion of Seed Hollow destroyed this mechanism, causing the Primal to reveal herself in defense.
Now that I think about it, the ghost rumors started to pop up only after that crystal beneath the castle was destroyed.
So, it was all connected. There's no time to explain, but more ominous forms will appear if we don't repair this island's defense system. Where could we find another fortifying crystal?
How about Dolly? That's where Excavalian lives now, right? Maybe it's got a spare lying around.
Indeed. If we were to find a solution to our problems, it would be buried beneath those churning sands. If I'm not mistaken, we should come across a Guardian Crystal not too far from here. Let's take a look around those hills. Do you remember where we fought that griffin? Oh, oops. Didn't mean to wake you. Mind letting us pass through?
Oops! Made you look!
Not quite the crystal we're looking for.
I don't think we're in the right place. Let's try to hit up that hilly area. Nothing this way either, huh?
A wild monster's den. I'd like to avoid needless bloodshed if possible. Come, Crimson Gold!
Tear them apart!
Come join.
Excellent execution!
Come, Crimson Thorn! Full blood!
Excavalian. It's faint, but I can feel it.
Did we find it?
Ah! A cobra! It must have been waiting to strike!
It seems words won't work here. Get ready, everyone. Careful. Don't let it... Now then, where were we?
Oh, we did it! Let's take this crystal back to Seed Hollow.
Shortly after securing a crystal from Dolly, we returned to Seed Hollow Castle. We installed the new crystal beneath the castle, causing a pale green light to illuminate the area. It was the familiar aura of hallowed ground, sure to repel any lingering ominous forms.
It's too bad we couldn't meet her. Konohana Sakuya.
The mystery had been solved on nearly all fronts. I'd be lying if I said I was After all was said and done, I still didn't get the opportunity to clear the air with her.
Yeah?
No.
Come to view the requests?
Peace returned to Seed Hollow, and it was soon back to the usual hustle and bustle. I informed the frightened repairman of the girl's true identity, the primeval god of Seed Hollow.
A primeval god?
Holy macaroni! That's a spicy nugget of news. How do you manage to stay so charming and informed?
A lady never reveals her secrets.
It's a little sad that you couldn't meet Konohana Sakuya. I know you wanted to apologize to her.
I knew, somewhere deep down, that talking with her wouldn't bring back all the journeys I had with the captain's father. However, seeing all the blue felt as if she was acknowledging me anyway. I may well have imagined it, but call it something of a mutual understanding between distant sisters. After the vibrant patchwork of spring began to spread throughout Seed Hollow, I made a habit of taking a daily stroll around the city. On one of my walks, I had mindlessly put the crystal fragment in my dress. After arriving at a particularly sunny spot, I took it out to admire it. Something about it was different today. Instead of my usual reflection, if not only for a brief second, I saw a smile that wasn't my own. A girl in a flower crown. Our eyes met for a second before, pop! A single rose had materialized at my feet. When I looked back into the fragment, she was nowhere to be seen. Although I can't prove it, I know that she was here, listening to me. So I whispered, "Beautiful. This city has blossomed under your care, all while blooming in your own right. You deserve to be here."
I was born in a snow-laden hamlet, peopled by Harvins, small folk more accustomed to the plow than the sword. We believed the skies far too vast for us, and, as I was soon to learn, its dangers far too many. It happened when I was yet a green, callow youth. I strayed beyond our fences and into the claws of a monster. I cried for help, but all that met my voice were the howls of the wind. Abandoned even by hope, I could only give myself up to death. But before the darkness took hold, I saw brilliant figures skimming the sun-kissed snow. They were the Lumiel Order of Holy Knights, come to my rescue. Oh, that there were words bright enough to reflect their flashing swords as they did battle with the beast. Or sounds tender enough to echo the kindness with which they took my hand and led me home. What can I say? But that they were as mighty and generous as the sun. On that fateful day, they gave me life and guidance. I learned that by shutting your eyes to danger, you only leave it free to wander in the darkness. Thus, I resolved to turn toward the light and become defender to the skies. I would join Lumiel and, with my farmer's hands, bear aloft the banner of virtue. I threw all my being into training, begrudging no amount of sweat or tears. And, with the passing of days, that little girl lost in the snow grew to become the captain of the Lumiel Order of Holy Knights. As captain of an Order of Knights, I was faced with a colossal problem. And that was my small stature. No one had ever heard of a Harvan leading a charge, what with our stout legs and poor reach. Now that I lived among drafts and humans, I would have to develop a style of combat that would turn my size, if I may so phrase it, into a matter of little importance. Seeing that I worked twice as hard, despite being half as large, my compatriots grew to respect me. When I was appointed captain, their very heartstrings thrummed with joy. But even the brightest diamond has its flaws. Within Lumiel's proud walls, there were some that scoffed to behold a Harvan captain of their knights. For my part, I cared not what was said of me. However, I would not stand to have the good names of my comrades dragged through the mud. We are an august and redoubted order, and I'd rise up to that image, by any means necessary. Thus began my days of height exercises, stretching devices, and miraculous concoctions. Not all came from reputable sources, but I took a tactical approach. If it had a chance of working, I'd try it. Days grew into weeks, which grew into months. But I grew not 1 inch. Then, it happened. Right as I was on the verge of losing all hope, word reached me of a distant village that had devised a height tonic. Here was the answer to all my prayers. With expectation lending a spring to my step, I slipped from my quarters and set out on my quest. I had to take a mountain pass to the village, which was, in a word, perilous. Of course, I refer not to the countless monsters and bandits, whom I took down with ease. It was the tall steps and great boulders, insurmountable obstacles for a Harvan. I was forced to return to the foothills where, through Lady Sierra Carte, I sent out a dispatch for help. That was how I met the captain and crew of the Grand Cipher. With their aid, I reached the village without further incident, only to have my dreams utterly crushed. It turned out that this magic tonic was merely your average growth stimulant, designed to help a budding youth blossom to a seemly height. It could do little for a woman like me, already in the prime of her life. Thus, all my best efforts were dashed to foam. For the first and only time in my life, I cursed fate for cutting me out of so short a cloth. However, it was within the depths of despair that I would find new hope. The crew of the Grand Cipher was bound for Estalucia, which is said to be an island of miracles. Could not some power there give me what I seek? With newfound resolve, I was determined to accompany the captain to the end of the skies. Needless to say, it pained me to take leave of the Lumiel Order. I still remember the look of surprise on former Officer Bautorda's face when I told him of my resolution. But in the end, he expressed his admiration for me and my quest to become the very figure of virtue. Lady Bridget and Lady Cordelia also gave me their blessings. Oh, there are no words to express how grateful I am to my kind comrades. I dream of the day I can return to them with my head held high, and its crown measuring many feet taller, being, at long last, in both body and spirit, the captain they deserve. Such are my thoughts as I peer out over the railings of the Grand Cipher onto boundless, majestic skies. One day, when I was visiting Seed Hollow on business, I espied a young man crouched in a corner of the central plaza. There was no mistaking his mussed hair, a style rebellious youth call the Mohawk, and surly face. Here was Sir Soupstock, helmsman of the family Zothba. Is something the matter? The lad met my inquiry with a scowl.
The hell are you looking at? Beat it, kid. Wait, hold on a sec. Ain't you a part of that crew?
Assured of my goodwill, Sir Soupstock unfolded his troubles. Whilst making his usual rounds squaring away accounts, the lad had met with some resistance. One of their clients, a nobleman disdainful of Sir Soupstock's low birth and tender age, had refused to pay.
I'm an officer too, you know. Got my own grunts working under me, good people. But we're dealing with the real frilly-pants, blue-blooded noble here. Any attempt to rough him up, and it's straight to the slammer.
'Twas a treacherous path, Sir Soupstock added. A single misstep, and it was his reputation in the mud. Hearing this, my heart went out to him, for I knew what it was like to feel green and small, with judging eyes upon me. I offered him my aid.
I appreciate the thought, but no offense. You look like a kid. If I bring you on my rounds, they're gonna change my name from Soupstock to Laughingstock.
At that moment, a servant arrived, bearing a message from the nobleman in question. It read, "I've decided to pay. Meet me at the following location." This whole affair was starting to smell ranker than a goblin's breath. He could just as easily have sent money with the servant. Why go through the trouble of arranging yet another meeting? There was mischief afoot, and I resolved to accompany Sir Soupstock to stop it in its tracks.
You wouldn't leave your sister behind.
We arrived at the appointed location, a corner of Castle Seed Hollow, to find the nobleman gazing down at us from a parapet.
Ah, just the face I've been waiting to see.
My hair stood on end. The crooked smile on his face spoke louder than words. Though I knew his intentions to be wicked, still, I tried to help the man see reason. You gave your word to pay the family Zothba what they are due. Surely you would not break your troth and besmirch your honor. But the man only sneered. Leveling a finger at us, he cried,
My brothers and sisters of the one true church, these are the enemies of Avia.
In the blink of an eye, we were surrounded by Aviate soldiers.
You did well to lead us here.
So these were the remnants of Avia. Even the fall of the church had not been enough to shake their faith in Lilith. In their eyes, Sir Soupstock and I were interlopers. Blasphemers they must put to death.
You've got another thing coming if you think you're gonna get away with this.
Sir Soupstock glared up at the Cullion. I too felt a righteous rage boiling within me. Crooked vice must be beaten straight with the hammer of justice. You shall rue the day you brought the wrath of Charlotta Fenia upon your heads! If you will not listen to our demands, I shall be forced to compel you to...
Does anyone else hear a buzzing little flea? Go forth, my Kayuatar, and decimate them!
Nice! A nightmare! This has to be a nightmare!
Right sword! Blessed is thy steel!
Sweet blazing broth! That crew of yours really is full of beasts!
After making some courteous response to Sir Soupstock, I turned my attention to the nobleman. You must pay for what you bought. I thought even children knew that. And so, with many groans and grimaces, the varlet handed Sir Soupstock what he was owed.
You sure got me out of a tight spot. Thanks. And sorry about all that crap I said about you looking like a kid.
I assured him there were no hard feelings. Comforted, he continued.
I shouldn't be saying this being in my line of business at all, but truth is I'm not much of a fighter. Would have been dead meat if it weren't for you.
He confided in me that, when the Tayuitar appeared, he felt the blood of courage draining from his body. I too am not immune to fear, but as a pure and righteous knight of Lumiel, I have duty, honor, and purpose as my guiding lights. Hearing that, Sir Soupstock graced me, for the first time that day, with a shy smile.
Yeah?
All right. Is your stomach growling? Give it what it wants.
Come to view the requests?
With the Aviath soldiers defeated and the money safely in hand, I believed it to be clear skies. And yet, some clouds still darkened Sir Soupstock's brow.
Man, I can't even do my job without somebody holding my hand. Maybe I just ain't cut out for this, yeah?
Apparently, even his own officers afforded him little respect. However, I saw in his earnest eyes and noble bearing that he had the makings of a great leader. Alas, we cannot view ourselves but by outward reflection, which often dims our inner value. You were given high office, Sir Soupstock. Does that not mean someone sees in you true worthiness, though you yourself may be blind to it? You must polish yourself until the quality of your character shines forth for all the world to behold. If you remain forever pure and forever righteous, then surely those around you will be attracted by your light. The lad lent me an attentive ear. But my words were not enough to blow the clouds of doubt from his face.
I mean, just take a look at how our city's split. You've got Golden Oaks, where the nobles and elite dwell, and the rest of us tucked away in Copper Square, which is, let's face it, a slum.
He continued.
Those wide-eyed beliefs of yours wouldn't last 2 seconds among the dirt and smoke of Copper Square. I wish I could be the person you say I am, but...
Biting his lip, Sir Soupstock shook his head and fell silent. few days later, Sir Soupstock asked me to meet with him again. In a cozy Seed Hollow tavern, he told me he'd investigated our erstwhile friend, the nobleman. It seemed the scoundrel was now prancing about the city, spreading lies and slander about the family Zothba. Sir Soupstock hoped to make his own rounds and mend what damage he could. But, fearing yet another ambush from Avia, he hoped I would accompany him as his guard. His own staff, infuriated by the nobleman's dastardly doings, were foaming at the mouth and mad for a fight. However, the level-minded Sir Soupstock knew that stooping to bloody violence would only further stain their image.
I've gone through his dirty linen. I'd leak it now, but with these rumors floating around, I don't know if anybody'd believe me.
Never one to stand for such injustice, I began cudgeling my brain for a solution. We began to meet with people in the street, contradicting the libel and restoring faith in the family Zothba. I learned that a good informant is well-known and well-trusted, and, according to his own officers, no one in Seed Hollow was better liked than Sir Soupstock. Though his mannerisms savored, admittedly, of a brute, at his core he was as sweet and pure as any lily. It was little wonder the denizens of Seed Hollow were fond of him. As we exchanged more words and tidbits of information, a picture began to form of the nobleman's intentions. He was not acting, it seemed, solely from a place of vengeance. The churl desired to build his own network of informants, using the remnants of the Church of Avia. Furthermore, in his lust for wealth, he was terrorizing the good people of Copper Square and compelling services from them. Thus, the family Zothba, who kept peace in the district, was to him a bother and a nuisance. It was likely he craved their banishment. Now, fully apprised of the situation, Sir Soupstock told me of his intention to once again meet face to face with the crafty villain. We called upon the nobleman, who, as before, had found himself a lofty place to stand, no doubt to compensate for his lowness of character. Sir Soupstock stepped bravely forth and spoke thus.
Listen, punk. We know you've been kidnapping people and using them for forced labor, which is, FYI, illegal. I've also got proof that all the money from that phony charity of yours is being used to hire Aviath soldiers.
And?
The nobleman showed no sign of discomposure. Not one hair on his well-groomed head stirred. And yet, Sir Soupstock, bless his valiant soul, refused to back down.
Once this information gets out, you can kiss your fancy-ass titles goodbye.
Oh, but it's not going to get out. You see, that's why I've threaded together my lovely little network. Those rumors I circulated? Merely the opening act. I've got the soldiers now, and come next week, it's curtains for the family Zothba.
The nobleman showed his teeth in a glacial grin.
You want all-out war? But why?
Sir Soupstock stared back, fuming.
Well, I suppose there's no harm in revealing my master plan here. Dead men tell no tales, and all that.
In the nobleman's eyes, coins from his charity were trickling toward a worthy cause, the subjugation of Copper Square. Putting the people there to work, he said, would do wonders for Seed Hollow's economy.
Can't you see?
With that, the nobleman pointed an accusing finger at us.
These interlopers mean to hinder the mission of the Church. Destroy them.
At the sound of his voice, Aviath's soldiers sprung from the shadows and hemmed us in. Stand down, Sir Soupstock! I shall teach them a lesson they won't soon forget! Here was a knave that would exploit the weak for his own profit. If I failed to make him repent his crimes, it would be a stain on the name of the Lumiel Order!
Fall, so that our church may rise again.
I shall never fall to wickedness!
Good? Evil? It's all relative. It's the winners who write history, after all.
Then let us see who fights for the stronger cause!
You're a tenacious little flea, I'll give you that. But this time, I brought my most ruthless warriors.
Violence and fear. Do you want this to be your legacy?
At least I shall have a legacy. What? You can't even kill a little girl? Fools! Worthless pigs!
How dare you speak to your comrades like that? You're the only pig here!
All units advance! Destroy them! Destroy them!
Soon, you shall see that justice always prevails!
Impossible! How were all those soldiers defeated by a single girl?
Fortune favors the virtuous. That was a battle for the ages! A leader must earn the good graces of their followers through pure and righteous conduct. You cannot buy it with gold, nor command it with power or titles. But instead of lending an ear to my advice, the nobleman began running his mouth, stabbing his own soldiers in the back with sharp words.
I thought you Avia bunch were stronger. Pity. The whole damned lot of you aren't even worth a rupee. But don't think you've won, interlopers. I am still a member of the noblesse. Those copper square dogs would lick my shoes in return for a crumb of favor. You may celebrate for a day, but the ultimate triumph shall be mine!
You sure about that?
Sir Soupstock pulled a transceiver from his pocket.
Everything you've said to us, you've said to those copper square dogs. Face it, jackass. You're finished.
Voices of censure and indignation began to spill from the transceiver. As Sir Soupstock turned a dial, they magnified, filling all the air with rage.
It can't be.
Here and there, amongst the heated words, were cries of exultation and praise for the family Zappa. Thus, overcome by a raging sea of noise, the nobleman bowed his proud head and fell to his knees.
All right.
Yes, can I help you?
Sir Soupstock and his staff expressed great admiration for my swordplay.
It's just mind-boggling, you know? You've probably trained harder than most of the best mercenaries out there.
His words raised the gate on a flood of memories, washing me back to a time when I was desperate to prove myself. Yes, it took hard training and much toil to come this far. But I would have collapsed by the wayside long ago, if there hadn't been people who supported me on my path. I am where I am because of them. Now, I tried to pay their goodwill forward by helping others as they helped me.
So you never stopped trying to be the best version of yourself?
Sir Soupstock turned his eyes toward the heavens.
I wish I could be strong like you. I wish I had the guts to just go busting in through the front door, sword blazing and ready to dispense justice.
Hearing this, all of his officers raised their voices in protest.
But you are strong. You got it all, man. The brains, the chill, the network, and the integrity. You could search the whole sky and never find a better informant. We're proud to work for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Sir Zothbot, who'd been watching from afar, made his way forward and clapped a hand on Sir Soupstock's shoulder.
You did good, Soupstock. Just like I knew you would.
Boss, it's an honor.
And that was the first time I ever saw Sir Soupstock give free rein to his emotions. When I visited Seed Hollow sometime later, I heard at the Knick-Knack Shack a certain rumor. Apparently, one of the officers of the family Zothba had taken up forever pure, forever righteous as his creed. Even his staff could be heard reciting the words.
The Justice Soup Gang, led by Mr. Mohawk, has been getting a lot of missions lately, and the family Zothba stocks are on the rise. Their soup stock, that is.
I glanced about me and saw only faces as bright as the sun. And I knew in my heart that the warmth of those smiles did not derive from Lady Sierra Carte's rather pitiable jest.
I trusted only my fists. If you wish to reach transcendence, you must beat out the path with your own knuckles. Which is why when my fists began to tremble in anticipation, I listened. It was as if they whispered, "A terrible future awaits these skies. Fail to act. An unprecedented calamity will befall you." How could they know? In truth, they knew more than most scholars, having experienced the rigors of fundamental aesthetic practice. I tempered them relentlessly, so they could foretell which timeline would lead them to the most strength. But you may ask, how far can one go with omnipotent fists? A foolish question. Only cowards measure progress in distance, in achievement. Blood boils through these fingers. That is all I need to know. Ah, I feel the fire raging inside. The storm has arrived. And I shall catch it with my bare hands. Divinity above, I wish you no ill will, but your defeat shall be evidence of my life's work. How recited, I ended the evening's meditation. Decades of such ascetic training had finally borne fruit. I had honed the eternal raid style to a godlike edge. But the long years had also revealed to me an enemy I could never defeat. Time itself. My inevitable demise meant there would be no more eternal raid style. I would need a disciple, someone worthy of inheriting my technique. Of course, coal is not transformed into diamond so easily. It would be a fool's errand to find a successor, who could survive the necessary time and rigor. Thus, when I finally met the captain, I was happy to be that fool. Now I could pass on my legacy. But the captain had another goal in mind, to reach Estalucia and reunite with dear old Papa. Filial piety was a respectable tenet, but it was no god-shattering fist. Despite my pleas, I failed to convince the captain to become my pupil. However, something must have resonated with the young master, because I received an invitation to join the Grand Cypher's crew. If I could not produce a scion of eternal rage, at least I would gain new allies. Walking aboard the airship, my fists buzzed. Ah! Oh, there would be something more to this meeting after all. Worthy Captain, I choose to fight by your side for the glory of the crew, for the glory of reaching Estalucia. And after we return, we shall discuss your future with the Eternal Rage style in earnest.
You heard all the stories about the old man, right?
I could hardly believe my ears. Ripping the Grim Basin apart with a single punch? Joining a war just so he could spar? And defeating both sides? Knocking over a whole mountain just from turning in his sleep? I call BS. And just like crap, there was probably a kernel of truth in there somewhere, but come on, who believes this stuff? Turns out, idiots like me. See, I've actually witnessed Gondagoza smash a meteor into space dust. You think people will catch on to that story, too?
Of course they will. Why else do people go to the pub? Man's favorite pastime is recounting tales of people braver than themselves.
But it's so hard to believe, and I saw him do the damn thing. So, yep, though the old master's legends were numerous, and honestly downright ridiculous, they were also the truth. What's crazier, Gonda would never toot his own horn. After crushing a dragon with a sneeze or what have you, he'd just say, "Ah." Yep, actions speak louder than words. That's a real man's man for you. You gotta admire that. What I would give for his rippling biceps, though. Looking back now, none of us could have known. There, in the Zeka Grande Skydom, Gondagoza was about to use those rippling biceps to start a whole brand new mythos.
Sierra gave us the news. A lone brawler managed to stop a force of hundreds atop Mount Nagelith, all while quelling a raging blizzard with his bare hands? I'm not a betting man. Well, I'm not a drinking man, but, well, I'm not a man who bets when he drinks, but I'd put good money on our brawler being Gondagoza. It hadn't been that long since we sailed to Zeka Grande, so the old badger must have been working overtime for word to spread so quick. I asked Sierra to spill the details. The force he scattered was a group of soldiers, remnants of the Church of Avia, and word was they were specialists in guerrilla warfare. Sure as hell they were a fierce troop. How does an unarmed martial artist take them all out? Not that I could ask the master, because you know what he'd say. But hey, who needs words when you got those defined shoulder blades doing the talking? Guess it was just one more legend for the books.
Call for reinforcements! We need all the support we can get!
Why is everyone from that crew a beast? What are they feeding them on that ship?
It was a nightmare. Actually, worse. You could wake up from a nightmare. This was our reality. We were being driven into the heart of Mount Nagelith by a single Skyfarer. Even though he was alone, he was with the crew who defeated General Galanza. Our only chance was to put aside our pride and work together to take him down. Our platoon was experienced, and we could launch the prototype Tayuatar if things started looking rough. We had numbers and strategy on our side. With all of our preparations, victory should have been assured. But he took one look at our perfect formations and laughed.
Ha 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 ha! You honor me with this extra training. I, Gandagosa, shall now return the favor with eternal rage!
You what? This guy was nuts. All of these soldiers, and this was just a field exercise to him?
Get your asses in gear! Do not break ranks!
Command snapped my mind back into focus. I drew my sword, but as I clutched its hilt, I had never been more sure it was just a hunk of scrap metal.
We walk the path of eternal rage.
Keep your distance, or you won't make it out of here alive.
Roger! Yeah! How will you train from so far away? Eternal rage style, unleashed! Death wave! Iron shoulder!
Is this a joke to him? Who is this guy?
Could be the devil himself for all I care. Back up. We can't take him on our own.
Step forward! I still need to finish my warm-up. Arhat! Skybreaker! My fish grow restless.
Curse our luck. He's leaving me with no option.
Descend! It's the Vulcan!
Plan C! But sir, he doesn't even have armor on!
Just do it! Either we deploy our secret weapon. Go, Tayuatar! Deliver us from this accursed giant!
I applaud your desire to continue fighting, but...
It's over. He took out the Tayuatar.
Of course he did. I want all units deployed. Courage, troops! No one lives forever.
With these fists, nothing is impossible! Arhat! Victory is mine!
He's a monster!
Commander, your orders! Commander?
Behold! Ah! True ferocity!
It was a nightmare. Actually worse. You could wake up from a nightmare. This was our reality.
Where are they? Bring me your champions!
We were an entire platoon of pilgrims. We even deployed the Tayuatar. He wasn't even inconvenienced.
Retreat! Retreat!
My mind was cloudy. I barely heard the commander's order. How could I think? I saw it. I saw the force of his punches redirect the blizzard. He had to be a demon. No mortal could beat the damn weather into submission. Not to mention the lack of corpses. This battle had been brutal, but so far no one had sustained critical injuries. Which means he had been holding back. A man like this, he was as strong as General Galanza. No, stronger maybe. Finally, I gathered enough sense to unfreeze my feet and turn tail. As I ran away, I got the sense I'd just witnessed history in the making.
Yeah? Hello there.
I will fondly remember my splendid time atop Mount Nagelith. Deadly blizzard pummeling my flesh, freezing cold stabbing my lungs, and swarms of monsters looking to turn me into a long overdue meal. These were already the perfect conditions for training, but sweet, generous fortune had even more in store. I crested a snowy knoll. What should I see but the obvious crusaders setting up camp for their own war games? Follow the fist, or it shall lead to serendipity. Unfortunately, however, it seemed my newfound sparring partners were on a stricter schedule than I, as they took their leave before I could properly thank them.
Dondagoza, a letter came for you.
Now this was a rare occurrence.
It looks like it's from... Whoa, no way!
Her mouth was agape. I peered down to read why. From Galanza. The Silver Wolf Corps General. This would be intriguing.
To Master Granblue, distinguished practitioner of the Eternal Rage style. Thank you for meeting my strongest force on the field of battle. They spoke highly of your ferocity. In fact, some suggest you may be stronger than me, which is why I demand a duel. If you are not a coward, meet me in front of Tradam's sanctuary, atop Mount Nagelith. ASAP! I expect a deathmatch, as the skies have never seen before! Signed, the invincible and unparalleled General of the Silver Wolf Corps, Galanza.
Oh no, Mega Pops! You can't go alone! He's way... Right. Who knows what could happen during a fight with that man?
What loving kids to spare their thoughts for me. But Galanza was a man of unparalleled battle acumen. I could not pass on such an opportunity. Call myself the greatest fighter in all the skies. I must best the greatest fighters in all the skies. Captain looked at me with trusting eyes, as if to say, "Go, noble warrior. This crew believes in the might of your god-shattering fists." Seeing the tacit acceptance of their commanding officer, Lyria and Vern finally relented, but they insisted on joining, in case the worst befell me. Their support was my tailwind. We left for the battlefield. Witness me, children. I shall fight the fight of rage!
Good. You're right on time.
Dondagoza and Galanza stood opposite one another. The air was tense, one spark from exploding.
Dondagoza of the Eternal Rage style, at your service.
Dondagoza spread his legs shoulder-width apart and raised his fist. He was ready for...
In his corner, the Silver Wolf himself, Galanza! And in this corner, a man whose sheer rage is matched only by his weird beard, Gandagoza!
Ah! You nearly gave me a heart attack. Where did you come from?
Yeah, Ref. What are you doing here? You could get hurt.
I've been following the legend of a master martial artist for years, and today, all of us will finally see his fist reach for the title of strongest. Don't blink or you'll miss it! A new legend is about to be born!
Sounds like somebody could use a reality check.
Suddenly, things had gone from tense to weird and tense.
Now, once again, Sky Folk of all ages, prepare yourselves for...
Hey, don't step on our gig. There's already too many characters in this scene. We'll do the commentating around here.
No, we're not licensed to broadcast. But never mind about our qualifications. Something more important was on the line.
I want a clean fight. Now, believe in victory. Engage!
We walk the path of eternal rage.
Well, the match of the century has just begun. Who do you think has the upper hand here, Lyria?
From the clouds breaks the storm.
Honor me. I would expect nothing.
Gandagoza put his whole heart in that one. Has he done it?
Gandagoza?
I can't look! Gandagoza and Galanza were going all out. They were like warring primals, blasting each other with crazy techniques. Finally, when the dust had settled...
The last man standing is Gandagoza! Let's hear it for those furious fists of legend, ladies and gents!
Megapops pulled off the victory, though Galanza was no slouch either. Simply put, the stronger man took the match. Boy, I wish I were ripped like Ganda. If I had his muscles, I bet I could have stopped that whole Avia mess in 2 seconds flat. Oops, where was I? Right, Megapops had done it again. He'd proven himself in the ring and taken out one of the Skydom's best fighters. Score one more for the Eternal Rage legacy. I couldn't wait to get back and tell Rackham and Eugen the good news. They were basically Gondastorians by now, and this would be one more legend for their repertoire.
Yeah?
See you next time. Ah,